What is up, football fans and degens alike? I am your host, Mr. Sebastian Feron, aka the Degen Doc, and this is another edition of IDP Plus Bets. That is right, folks, and it is a UFL segment. We are breaking down UFL Week 5. Week 5 of the UFL. That's right. We're almost halfway through. There's only 10 weeks in the regular season. So after this week, we will be at the halfway mark. So we're starting to figure out what teams are and what teams aren't, because there's been some definite parity. We got an undefeated team. We've got a winless team still, with the Birmingham Starlings at 4-0 and your Arlington Renegades at 0-4. What a week. Well, coming in, recording this Thursday night, first night of the NFL draft. You can see me repping my Giants gear. I'm pretty happy with Malik Neighbors. The biggest thing I'm happy with is we did not reach for a quarterback like we did back in 2019 when, with the number 6 pick, the New York Giants selected Daniel Jones. If we would have selected J.J. McCarthy, I would have been very upset. We literally have a J.J. McCarthy at home. Daniel Jones, J.J. McCarthy, both overrated quarterbacks that we don't need to, we've been down that road, man. I'm very happy with Malik Neighbors. Think he's an awesome player. Actually gave him out at plus 160 on the draft best bets episode. So nice little cash and nice little fandom win there, because I did like Neighbors. I'm just very happy we did not go quarterback. But we're going on to UFL Week 4. Let's start with a quick recap for what we saw last week UFL Week 5. We're going to recap Week 4. Here were your scores. So we had the Memphis Showboats losing to the St. Louis Battlehawks. Now, this Memphis was a little bit of a tough one. Memphis, I really liked Memphis last week, and they were right in it. They were, it was back and forth game all the way until the fourth quarter, where Case Cookis, their starting quarterback, got knocked out of the game late. And that backup quarterback, Troy Williams, he really just was not it. I mean, really, that offensive line is a problem. I liked Case Cookis enough that I thought he could overcome some of that. Despite the O-line, I like their wide receivers. Their defense is pretty good at times, but man, that offensive line is a liability. Then we had the DC Defenders and Birmingham Stallions. So Birmingham Stallions did get the win. They stayed undefeated, but they needed a last-second field goal to go ahead and get that done. DC, now that was a wonky game. There was a lot of weather. There was a delay in the middle of it. Birmingham was down in the red zone twice, and they fumbled and came up with no points. That was a game I watched in and out because I was actually at the Michigan Panthers and San Antonio Brahmas game, where the San Antonio Brahmas, that score is even a little misleading. The Brahmas absolutely dominated the game from start to finish. We'll talk a little bit more about that game in a second, but I hit San Antonio there, hit the under there. That was the best game for me on the slate so far. Really helped bring some things out there, get to close back to even. And Arlington, I got to learn my lesson with Arlington. I mean, I thought, I didn't think Arlington was a good team, but I thought Houston was that bad. But Arlington, they had turnovers in the red zone. They just looked awful on all fronts. I mean, 9 points. I understand that Houston Roughnecks are a pretty good defense, but Michigan just put up 34 on them the week before. So it's bad times in Arlington. That is bad time. So it might be a little bit foreshadowing. So that was the quick recap of Week 4. But we're turning the page, and we're heading into Week 5. Before we do that, nice little announcement here. So, I mentioned that I got to go to first live action UFL game here in San Antonio. As you can probably tell by the hotel room aspect, clearly here for a little bit of training. But, it was a pretty awesome experience. Actually, not only got to go, but I got to go as credentialed member of the media. That's right, your boy's first media credential game here. So got to go and actually report on the game. So got to sit in the press box and hang out with that. So that was a really cool experience as far as getting to not only go to the game, but to be in the press box and to be able to see, really, I got to go onto the field. I got field access. I got to do post game interviews, locker room, not locker room, more the press conference. So I got to ask legendary coach Wade Phillips some questions and talk to really the star of the show there, Mr. Quentin Dormady. The San Antonio Brahmas had a lot of questions coming in. They had a lot. Chase Garbers and starting quarterback was down for the year. In steps Quentin Dormady. And little did we know, he was a hometown hero. He grew up in San Antonio, in one of the neighborhoods around San Antonio. So this was really kind of a homecoming for him. And on the weekend of Fiesta, there's a massive week plus long festival that they do called Fiesta here in San Antonio. So the energy in the Alamo Dome was absolutely electric. Listen, I could talk about it for a long time, but instead of just hearing me ramble about it, what you can do is you can head on over to the UFL.com and check over the news there at UFL.com/ or you just go to the website, UFL's official website, and go over to the news section, and you'll probably recognize this guy. So yeah, I actually got to write an article on the official website there talking about my experience, at the game, and how I recapping the game and how I saw that. So feel free to read that. Obviously, I'm gonna close this down now, but yeah, it was all around a great experience. So shout out to San Antonio Brahma, shout out to the UFL for setting that up. Hopefully, it won't be my last article for them. But we'll see. I'm in the works with another article, a little bit different, a little bit more, I'll kind of tease it in, but a little bit more on the medical side of what they do there. But it was an overall great experience. So I encourage you, if you haven't been to a UFL game live, go. There's some passionate fans there. It's a really good product. And it's just a bunch of players and guys trying to make it to the next step. So it was a really cool experience. Definitely, 10 out of 10 there. So we're moving on. We're going on to week 5. We move forward. No more looking in the review mirror. We're just looking at our dashboard here. Here's what we got for the slate. We got 2 games on Saturday at the same time. So we'll get, again, that regional coverage. Be honest, I have no idea why they're doing this. I don't know why they don't just do one early, one late. That has been a good formula. But at least on Sunday, we get the one late, one later, and one at noon. So the typical 4-game slate here. Let's start with the first game up, and that is the San Antonio Brahmas are heading to Arlington, Texas to take on the Renegades. Now, yes, technically it is a road game, but in reality, not really a road game. Actually, Wade Phillips talked about this at the post-game press conference, and he said the players literally get to sleep in their bed the night before. So it is a very quick trip over to Arlington, nothing crazy. So, and the other thing about this is Arlington is one of those fan bases that there's not really a home edge. I'd say St. Louis has the biggest home advantage for sure in that dome. They really pack that shit. That's awesome to see. So if you're part of that Kaka Nation of St. Louis Battlehawks there, shout out to you because that's awesome. Birmingham is probably next. And then, DC and San Antonio are also pretty good, give a pretty good presence, around 10,000 plus. But Arlington, Houston did a little bit better last week, but Arlington's really been struggling. Michigan hasn't done super well either. So Arlington, even though they're at home, I wouldn't expect much of an edge here. So for this game, San Antonio is favored by 2.5. Over under is 42.5. As we always do, let's take a look at our injuries here, start breaking things down. So as you can see, based on this injury report, so we got the 2 full injury reports for the first 2 Saturday games and the depth charts. And then Sunday, there's still a little bit of questions. We won't get that until tomorrow. But so a little bit of good and bad news, mixed news for the San Antonio Brahmas. So Trace Garber's on IR. He's likely done for the year. So, he's out. And then Anthony McFarland, running back number 1 for them, he's out for a second week in a row. Hasn't practiced at all, which tells me he's probably not even close really to being ready. But the other thing that's more surprising is 2 defensive linemen who got banged up in their last week's win, Wyatt Ray and Kavion Patton. It's pretty productive members of that defensive line, starters. They're both going to be out. They did not practice at all this week as well. The good news is they're getting back Delonte Scott, who is arguably their best pass rusher. So I think he immediately kind of makes up for the Wyatt Ray void there. And then they're also getting back Zach McLeod, another linebacker, outside linebacker, edge rusher on that side. So they got a little bit of work to fill that hole in the inside of Patton. And Latimer looks like he's probable. But the good news for that is Arlington can't run the ball worth shit. So missing one of your defensive tackles is never great, but it's going to be, I think, diminished. That loss is going to be diminished a little bit because of who you're playing. Now on the other side of the ball, Arlington fairly healthy. You got a couple guys at the bottom that are out that are kind of insignificant, but really the biggest injury in this entire game, in my opinion, is defensive tackle Jalen Redmond. He is by far the best player on maybe that whole entire Arlington team, but definitely on that terrible defense that is the worst in the league. So Jalen Redmond being out is a huge concern for me for the Arlington side of the ball. Arlington already has a hard time stopping a nosebleed, but they really get gashed up the middle in the running game. Then they do not produce a lot of pressure. Jalen Redmond is the one guy who can really impact the game from the Arlington defensive side of the ball. And without him out there, that's a huge loss. You also had Luis Perez on there, starting quarterback. He's been dealing with a knee injury ever since 2 weeks ago. He's going to play, but it affects his mobility. Last game, he was not as mobile as he usually is. And when you have a pretty poor offensive line and you've got San Antonio has the best pass rush in the league. They had 6 sacks last week, all from different guys. And you're getting their best pass rusher back. I know you're losing a couple guys, but they've got a lot of dudes on that line. That is a recipe for disaster. So the writing is on the wall, as you can probably tell. But even though, Arlington may have less starters out due to injury, with Redmond being such a big deal, with Perez still being banged up, and with San Antonio getting back Scott, I do like the San Antonio Brahmas in this game. So here's a quick look at their depth chart. Nothing really out of the ordinary there. Obviously, the guys that were ruled out are inactive, and on the other side of the ball, same thing. Maybe of note is that Isaiah Winstead, who had a really big week 1 for Arlington, is inactive. Seems to be a healthy scratch situation there, trying to figure out something on the offense that barely produced at all last week. But pretty set. You got Quentin Dormey again set to take his second start. And, man, he looked good. And he's a bit more of a gunslinger than Chase Garbers. Chase Garbers is a little bit more of a game manager. Quentin Dormey has no fear. He's going to let that thing rip. And they got 3 really good wide receivers in John Trey Kirkland, Marquez Stevenson, and Justin Smith. Really kind of came out of nowhere, exploded last week for over 100 yards. So if you got those 3 guys, plus you throw in Cody Latimer, I just don't know. There's not a lot of things that Arlington defense does well. They are the worst defense in the league, kind of by far. They really don't. They just don't do much well, really. It's tough. It's very tough. I really like their offense for the past couple of weeks, but just when they losing that game to Houston, I think there's two teams going in opposite directions. San Antonio had an absolute dominant win last week against a pretty decent Michigan team, and Arlington looked awful against a really bad Houston team. So my best bet for UFL Week 5 is actually going to be San Antonio laying the 2.5. Give me San Antonio minus 2.5 there. That is where I love this week. I'm all over San Antonio. No Jalen Redmond, a little bit banged up Luis Perez. San Antonio's getting their best pass rusher back, and Quentin Dormey looks good. And, I understand when your RB1 and your QB1 are out, you've got some questions, but they answer those questions. Both Dormey and John Levitt answer those questions very well last week. So give me the Brahmas to continue it rolling. I think the Brahmas really have a shot to be the second best team in the league. I'm not completely sold on the Battlehawks. Obviously, Birmingham Stallions are going to hold the number 1 spot until they lose a game, really. But I do think San Antonio is a really good team. I don't think that was a flash in the pan last week. The other thing, too, is matchup-wise, San Antonio has the best pass defense in the league. Between their pass rush and their DBs, they're really solid. And Arlington has really struggled to run the ball, regardless of who they're playing. So if Arlington has success, it's typically through the air. And if you take what they do best away from them, I think that's really a tough tough spot for Arlington. As much as I like Luis Perez, I got to start reading the room, and I'm taking the San Antonio Brahmas. All right. Next up on the docket, next game up, we have the Birmingham Stallions taking on the Houston Roughnecks. And man, Houston was somewhat impressive. I mean, they weren't crazy impressive last week. I think it was a little bit more of Arlington just sucking ass. But Houston definitely looked a lot more competent on all phases of the ball, and a lot had to do with the return of running back Mark Thompson. He really is a difference maker. He scored a touchdown last week on a play where he just seems to make the first guy miss every time. He was probably close to like 70% last week. He only got, I think like 9 to 10 touches. They were talking about, Curtis Johnson, head coach, said he's going to get him closer to 25, maybe 30 touches. So he's getting healthier and he's getting back, and he makes that much of a difference to this team. If they can run the ball, they were running a lot of play action or read option, not really read option, run pass option, where Reed Senate can hand the ball off or he can pull it and, throw it. And that actually worked really well. And, it's something I think they could have some success with Birmingham. Now, Birmingham, let's look at the injury reports here. So as you can see, Birmingham's is a lot larger than Houston's. We'll start with Houston because it's shorter. Really, the biggest one for Houston is Toby Johnson, defensive tackle. He was out last week. He looks like he's definitely going to be out this week. Looks like he's dealing with an MCL injury. He actually tweeted about it. If you go to his X, you'll see he's tweeting about it. It was grade 2. So, it's typically like 3 to 6 week injury. He's talking about he still can't bend his knee. So it sounds like he's going to be out for a little while. But he's a good player. But if Houston has one thing, they have a good D line and they have good linebackers. Even last week they had some backups fill in very well for Toby Johnson, even though he's a good player. I think that they have the personnel where that's not a huge loss for Houston. So Houston relatively healthy going in. Or on the Birmingham side of the ball, they got some key guys out. First off, the saddest news that we're going to start with is linebacker Scooby Wright. I mean, it's just tough, because he is such a dynamic player. If you watch the XFL or the USFL, and he's a fireball. He has one of the highest motors that you're gonna see in football and like in general, but obviously to spring football, he's a legend. He's a legend in spring football. There's no doubt about it. It sucks. It really sucks that it looks like he's retiring from the game. He's forced to retire. I'm pulling up here kind of the tweet where he was talking. Here it is. All right, here we go. All right, let me go ahead and share my screen so you can see what I'm rambling about here. Yeah, so here's the tweet over on my X. I kind of retweeted it. It was kind of a cryptic message, but he tweeted up like his cleats being hung up, and then that post had been deleted, but he says, "Ain't nothing happy about it. I can't even look left without shooting pain going down my arm." So basically, yeah, it looks like due to a neck injury, Scooby that he's been dealing with for really the whole season, and that's not getting any better. Once you start getting those neurological problems, you start to get worried. You definitely don't want to keep pounding it into other large individuals and make it to the point where you got to require surgery or something like that. So it's super unfortunate for Scooby right there, but it sounds like he's making the best decision for his health. It's just a very unfortunate spot for not only the Birmingham Stallions, but just him as a player, because he's such an electric player to watch. So no Scooby Wright, which is huge, and then no CJ Marable for personal reasons. Personal reasons always, I'm not going to speculate, whether, could be a lot of things, but he's not going to be out there. So you got your starting linebacker, your best linebacker, and your best running back are going to be out. Now, Ricky Pearson Jr. There for them. Here, we'll pull up their depth chart. So UFL is never uniform, so obviously this one looks a little bit different. But if you see on the Birmingham Starlings offense, Ricky Pearson Jr., he's a stud. He is a stud. but it's nice to have that two-handed monster with him and Marable. I don't think Larry Roundtree III is the same caliber as those backs, so there is going to be a little bit of it to hit there in that backfield. And then look at the depth chart. Last week, they started Matt Corral for Lord knows what reason. Adrian Martinez looked like the better quarterback. Now it has Adrian Martinez listed as the starter. Who knows what the hell's going on over there? The two quarterback system, I'm not a huge fan of it, but I think Martinez is better. But I think Matt Corral is going to get in the game because Skip Holtz is kind of set on that for whatever reason. So those are some big injuries there. And then obviously the Scooby right there for the Stallions. So I would say that Houston is definitely the healthier team going in, and I think that is going to bode well for their chances. So, again, kind of a multitude of things here. I'm going to side with Houston. So Birmingham is a 7.5 point favorite, and the over/under is 42. I'm actually going to go with Houston to cover the 7.5. So to stick within a touchdown. And I guess one extra point, right? Because you're not kicking in this league. So, but here's the thing. So I think the injury to Toby Johnson, it hurts the Houston defense, but they're good enough in that front seven to make up for it. They're healthy otherwise. And again, Mark Thompson, he's that big of a difference maker. If Houston can make Birmingham respect the run, which I think they can with Mark Thompson and no Scooby Wright, then that gives them a chance. That gives them a chance to stay in this game. If they can't run the ball and they're just going to try to throw the ball, that Birmingham pass rush is going to absolutely eat them alive, destroy them. I also like Houston on the defensive side because both these teams, Birmingham and Houston, are pretty good at stopping the run. And I would say the run game is vital to both these offenses, right? So, you got CJ Marable is going to be out this week. I know I like Ricky Pearson, but they're used to splitting time. And now when you bring Larry Roundtree in the game, how's that going to work? Adrian Martinez has had some fumble issues as well. So I just think that the same way that I think Houston needs to run the ball to have success, I think Birmingham does as well. I don't think Birmingham can just sit back there and throw the ball. That's not when they're at their best. So I think Houston can kind of neutralize Birmingham's best weapon in the run game and kind of frustrate Martinez and Corral there. So I think with the injuries and the style and kind of the matchup wise, I think Houston keeps it close. Also, Birmingham, I think, has won like 13 or 12 straight going back to last season. Their last loss came to Houston. So Houston and Mark Thompson gives this team trouble. I think he does it again. I think they keep it close. Maybe sprinkle a little bit on the money line if you're getting real crazy. But I do like him to keep it within the 7.5. And I also like the under in this game. I talked about how I like both these defenses are top defenses in the league. Definitely against the run. Houston's not as great against the pass, but they're not anything crazy bad. I think that overall, Houston's defense is a strong part of their team. They're fairly healthy. You're going up against a team without their RB1 and switching quarterbacks back and forth. I think this is an opportunity where Houston can shock some people and keep it closer. And let's be honest, Birmingham did not look very great just last week. So only with a 2-point win against, and they needed a last-second field goal. Really, they were very close to losing that game. All right, folks. Before we get on to the Sunday games, let me tell you about some of our partners here at IDP Plus. That is right. First up, I'm going to give you a deal for just $9.99. Yes, $9.99, under $10. You don't hear those deals anymore, folks. There's nothing under $10 in today's society. Man, that's the thing of the past. So make sure you're paying attention. Make sure you listen. It is the IDP Plus Rookie Guide, the comprehensive, one-of-a-kind rookie guide that goes in-depth, tells you about all the rookies in this upcoming 2024 year. The NFL Draft is happening. You need to know which rookies that you want on your fantasy rosters, you want to be backing, you want to be betting, and it's updated every Friday. And again, for the low price of $9.99, we'll put a link there below because that is on the website. And then another partner that we have that makes your life a lot easier when it comes to vacations, and that is Expedia. That is right. We're thrilled to announce our partnership with Expedia, which is a one-stop shop for everything you need travel. The way this will work is we're going to put a link in the description, and it's going to be our personal link with IDP guys and Expedia, and it's going to give you specific discounts. It's going to basically, because you are a fan of us, you are going to get our discounts and, be able to go directly to the Expedia and book your vacation. There's nothing worse than trying to go all these different sites and all these different areas just to try to get the best travel and hotel and car rental. Just put it all in one spot and do it at a discount for over at Expedia. All right, let's go ahead and get into the Sunday games here and wrap this thing up. So on Sunday, first game we have is St. Louis Battlehawks heading to DC to take on the Defenders, where DC has never lost a game in their home stadium, going back to when this league got started back up. I think this is going back to two years ago. I think they have not lost a game in that stadium there in DC, which is pretty incredible because it spans across several seasons. So we have St. Louis is favored by 3 on the road, and the over-under is 46.5. Highest total we have on this board. Now, St. Louis's offense has been on a roll, and DC has also shown that they can be capable. Now, this game has the biggest injury edge. So we'll pull up the injury report here. As you could see, another big injury report compared to a small one. So this game's Sunday. We don't have the official game statuses, so we got to do a little bit of educated guessing, a little bit of inference here. So for the DC side of the ball, we'll start with them. The big guy with the biggest question mark, who looks like he's going to be doubtful and likely not playing, is starting linebacker Francis Bernard with a hamstring injury. Hamstrings are tricky too anyway. Even if he did play, there's a high re-injury risk, so you can't really count on him for that. But it looks like mostly everybody else is going to be fairly healthy, which is a good sign. They're going to need everyone to be healthy if they want to have a shot against this Battlehawks team. But on the Battlehawks side of the ball, they already sent 2 players to injured reserve this week and basically ending their seasons. So that is Mateo Durant, the explosive running back. Probably the most explosive running back in the league, one of the fastest running backs. Now, I know running back Jacob Seiler and running back Wayne Gallman have been a good kind of adjunct, and Jacob Sailors has looked pretty good, but he doesn't have that explosive pop that Mateo Durant brings you. And then linebacker Callahan O'Reilly, who filled in pretty nicely when Mike Rose went down. They're both on the IR. They've also got 2 important defensive linemen, starters, Travis Feeney and Austin Fialu, who have not practiced and look like they're doubtful for this week. So that's going to be a loss. Now, they look like they are going to get Pita Tiamapenu, one of the best pass rushers in the league, back. That is a huge get. But, on the offensive side of the ball, it looks like Darius Shepard and Hakeem Butler, both starting wide receivers, banged up. They did get a limited practice in today, so there's a chance they play. Hamstring injuries are very tough to rehab within season and especially within weeks. So Shepard gives me a little bit more of a pause than Butler does. But that's a lot of key guys. I mean, we're not talking about bench warmers. We're not talking about these are contributors, starters on this team they got a lot of question marks coming in. So that's pretty concerning for me as far as the injury front. I think this is the biggest edge in the injury front. I think DC is clearly the healthier team, and I think that comes into play. So you got a couple things working against St. Louis. One, they're just not the same team on the road that they are at home. I mean, it makes sense. They literally have a massive crowd that gives them that home field advantage. Their one loss this season is on the road. And DC just has some magic at home. I mean, we saw them pull out of their ass a win against Arlington, where they came back from down, I think, 10 in the last 2 minutes. Jordan Ta'amu, there's something about that stadium where he just does not lose. So, they got the edge on the injury front. You got the home field advantage for DC. Give me DC to cover the 3 and give me DC on the money line at plus 145 to win this outright. I'm not completely sold on this Battlehawks team. I think they're a good team. I think they're definitely a playoff contender, but I'm not quite sold on them. A lot of people have them penciled in as the second best team in the league. I'm not ready to do that, and the injuries definitely do not help that factor. Now, I'm being honest, I'm not in love with the DC team as well. I think they're flawed. I think they're a lot softer on defense than they usually are, but they are a good group. They've got a good quarterback. Jordan Ta'amu is one of the better quarterbacks. He can put the team on his back as needed, but I think they're going to be able to get to run the ball, whether it's Ta'amu or it's Cameron Harris. I think they're going to have some success in the running game because you got two defensive linemen that are banged up and two key starters, and you got the linebacker there. So I think that, between the three injuries on offense and the three big injuries on defense, I think DC is able to have some success, and they're able to actually pull it out against St. Louis when St. Louis is on the road, and they're a lot more vulnerable than when they're behind, 40,000 strong there at home. All right, last game we got, and it is the Michigan Panthers taking on the Memphis Showboats there in Memphis, another team not with the best home field advantage. And these injury reports look pretty different. So Memphis is a 1.5 point favorite. It's pretty close to being even money there. Over or under is 40 points. And there's a lot of question marks in this game. So we'll start with some facts, some things we know. We know that EJ Perry is on the IR and he's not going to be playing for Michigan for the rest of the year. It is Danny Etling who came in and relieved him last week and looked, he was more productive than EJ Perry. He did have an interception and he does have some fumbling issues, but he looks more like a capable passer, and he's a bit mobile. He's not as mobile as EJ Perry. He's not as elusive as EJ Perry, but I think he throws a better ball, and he's a little bit more consistent when he's in the pocket. Now, looking at the injury report here for the Michigan side, we got a lot of guys that have not practicing. Hightower is a guy who really hasn't played much this year. He's kind of a non-factor right now. Marcus Sims is their best wide receiver, the biggest play wide receiver. He's been on the injury report every week, and it's looked like he's not going to play, and he's played every single week. He's dealing with a back injury, a little bit of shoulder. He played all of last game. I fully expect him to be out there again this week, and it just seems like he finds the end zone on a long touchdown every week. And then a bigger concern for me is the biggest concern on the Michigan side is left tackle Ryan Pope. He was out last week, and San Antonio absolutely that was the biggest one other than Dormady looking good. The biggest takeaway from that game was the battle in the trenches. The Michigan Panthers got dominated by San Antonio. Now, I do think San Antonio has the best pass rush and one of the best defensive lines in the league, so we do have to take that into account. I do not think Memphis has that same capability, but whenever you're out your starting left tackle and the backup has shown that he's not up to par, that's a serious concern. So, we got a new quarterback, we got a new left tackle. That is not what you want, the recipe for success for an offense that has already struggled to score this season. And then on Memphis side of the ball, we have a good amount of questions as well. You see the long injury report. Now, you do have more guys practicing in a limited fashion, which is a good sign, but the biggest concern is quarterback Case Cookus. Cookus got absolutely lit up last week on a big hit, and it seems like he's taking these hits all the time because that offensive line, as bad as Michigan's offensive line has been, Memphis has been arguably worse. It's just incredible with how much he is getting drilled. So I'm actually going to bring up the play here. Show you the play that he got injured on. Okay, so let's do this. Move that. We're going to show you. Yeah, let's look at this play here.
That knocks Cookus out. So the ball gets stripped off the edge.
Oh my
gosh. And then the stunt right there ends it. Clearly see Cookus holding his right shoulder.
Oh my goodness. As you can tell, absolutely vicious hit. Not only did it knock Cookus out of the game, but it pretty much knocked our chances of covering out right with him. So yeah, oh man, that's tough. Um, but yeah, he's listed as limited. I don't know. That was to his throwing shoulder. Um, I don't know how effective he's going to be if he does play, and he's going to be at a re-injury risk if he plays. I mean, it's to that throwing shoulder, whether it's an AC sprain. Obviously it's probably not any type of a fracture because he would be ruled out already. But not only is there a chance he doesn't play, but even if he does play, he's not going to be 100%. There's no way, man. Even if it's just like a good amount of soreness, like this Memphis offensive line is terrible. This Michigan defense is pretty good. Their front seven, they're really pretty solid unit all around. They're gonna be able to get pressure on him. He's gonna take more hits. And there is a massive, massive drop off between Cookus and Troy Williams. Troy Williams, the backup, looks like a deer in headlights every time he comes out there, and he's had to come in the last 2 games. He throws everything high. Throws a lot of interceptable passes, and this Michigan defense will absolutely eat him up. So that is the biggest thing there. They also have starting tackle James Tunstall. It's not practicing, doubtful. That's concerning. They got a lot of guys banged up. But the biggest concern is Case Cookus. So really, there's question marks on both of these offenses. So that probably keys you into where I'm going to be highlighting. The best play for this game for me is the under 40. I understand it's the the lowest total on the board, but I think Vegas is right. Both these teams average under 20 points normally anyway, and that is with EJ Perry, their starting quarterback, and that is with a fully capable Case Cookus, which neither are in week 5. I like both these defenses. I think both these defenses are solid. I would also, if I don't love either side just because of the question marks coming in, but if I had to, I would take Michigan at the plus money. I'd like the underplay better because I just think both these offenses are really going to struggle. I think we're either going to see like a limited, likely to be re-injured Case Cookus, or we're going to see Troy Williams the entire game, who is pretty awful, like just blatantly bad. And then Danny Etling with a new left tackle. He's not really exactly lit up the world. So this is going to be a pretty interesting matchup. I think it's going to be, a pretty low scoring affair where there's mistakes on both sides and both sides struggle to really, I think both offensive lines are two of the worst in the league. And it's really hard to do anything without an offensive line. I mean, you just saw it Memphis was able to put up 17, which is pretty impressive, but Michigan was only able to score 9, and they scored that last touchdown with like 3 minutes to go. It's actually right in front of me. It was a nice play to be able to see live, but it was that offense looked really bad. San Antonio really handled them. So give me the under 40 for that game. All right, folks, we've done it. We've made it. That is UFL breakdown and best bets for week 5. A really quick recap to go over all the bets that we talked about here. So for first, best bet on the slate for me, week 5, San Antonio Brahmas minus the 2.5 there. That is my best bet for UFO week 5. Moving to the Houston Birmingham game, I like Houston plus 7.5 and the under 42 in that game. St. Louis, DC, give me my dog, DC plus 3 and DC on the money line at plus 145. And then my favorite total on the board, Michigan versus Memphis. Give me the under 40. I also do think Michigan gets the win there outright. It's a little bit of a small dog there. So that is it for the UFL Week 5. Look, we're almost halfway there. We gotta make sure we cash in while we have spring football with us. Also encourage you, if you're not already, follow me on X at the Degen Doc or TikTok. That's where I put out the underdog fantasy plays. So was able to hit a 6X not last week, but the week before. So we're 1 for 3, but we're still positive in the green because, again, it was a 6X over on Underdog Fantasy. So it kind of got us up. We're still up 4 units over on the underdog plays there. So encourage you to check that out. I'll be dropping that tomorrow because Underdog doesn't drop their lines until tomorrow because they know we're coming for them, right? So you know what they say, folks. A lock a day keeps the bookie away. I hope you enjoyed this UFL Week 5 breakdown and best bets. And if you did, comment, like, subscribe, let us know. Other than that, Doc is out of here.